Okay, so just as an intro here, Matthew Mark is going to be presenting today this xEssentials session on creating and using low-resolution singing faces and graphics. Go ahead and take it away.
Quick little intro here. I'll go through just a blip on who I am. Discussing low resolution. I use what I call a light bright comparison, some software and websites that you guys can use. Exactly what the difference is between using high res and low res, and some scaling issues that occur in xLights itself. Some basic drawing and resizing of images that you may want to create yourself or that you find on the web, and how they really get used on the props that we use here in our shows, and a little bit of discussion of persistence of vision that actually helps us with our images cheat a little bit to make them look a little bit better. And that's really just kind of a mind trick that most of the time we're unaware of. Now, I'm a veteran, former law enforcement officer. I do a lot of contracting work for the government. The key to my knowledge in graphics, though, is I used to own a large format print shop 6 years ago for about 6 years. And that's where I learned a lot about graphics and what type of issues you run into when you want to scale them down, scale them up, and present them to an audience. And, it really applies whether it's in printed media, banners, business cards, even on the computers. You kind of run into the same situations and instances. Low resolution defined, it's very simple. Low resolution images lack the very sharp definition or fine details and shading that really make the images pop out. If you think of your old style arcade games, the Pac-Mans, Donkey Kongs, etc., even your desktop computer icons, emojis, similar images, those are all low res as well. In those images, there's just enough detail for the average person to look at it and say, oh yeah, that's a boat, that's a face, etc. Now, in our hobby with the lights, we can relate resolution to pixel density. Here's just a few examples. Again, you remember the old school arcades. If you look at the images, the text and everything, they're all blocky and they're put together pixel by pixel because they don't have the density necessary here. This is even the xLights logo blown up. If you look, that too is blocky. You look over on the right, the icon that appears on your desktop, again, your mind is fooled into seeing a clearer image because it's eliminating some of these shaded areas and stuff. Unfortunately, we don't have the luxury and low resolution, and I'm talking about smaller props and mega trees, to really get that type of shading in there. That's a 64 by 64 pixel image. It's not going to look good on a 20 by 20 matrix we use. Again, density is equal with resolution. If you look over on the left, you have 10 pixels per inch. Trying to draw a circle, it's not going to look good. You move over to the middle, 20 ppi. Over to the far right, you have 40 ppi, and that gives you a lot more definition and something that truly looks like a circle. Now, if you expound upon that, you get into your P5 panels, your P10 panels, etc., of course, you're going to get great, crisp images. Now, a lot of the people involved in the Singing Faces project and in xLights in general have provided a lot of really great images. But for newcomers and those who don't have those types of panels, we're kind of stuck with the lower resolution blockier images. But there's some things that you can do to make these look good on your show. Low res versus high res. What I did is I took a picture of the Mona Lisa. Again, you have your low res version, doesn't look like anything, compared to your high res version on the right hand side. And you can see the detail. You can see her eyes, her nose, the shading of her lips and everything like that. Now, if you look over to the far right in the smaller image of the two, you actually start to pull a little bit more detail out of that low res image because your mind will put things together and tell you what you should be seeing, even though it's not quite what we portray it to be. And again, Ryan covered this in his use of matrices. It relates to pixel density and distance and what you put on that matrix or prop to try and get the best image possible. You guys might want to play around a little bit when you start to do your own images and everything like that to see what they look like. But generally, you can get away with something a little bit lower res as long as you have the distance on it and people know what it should look like. I always talk about a light bright comparison. And a lot of people kind of wonder what it is. It's like, okay, how do you equate light bright to pixels? Here you are punching in little colored pegs into a screen to create images. And that's really no different than what we're doing here in our hobby. Only our light bright are the props that we create. We have a 20 by 20 little matrix, 32 by 32, standard 16 by 50 tree, and I have a 32 by 70 5-pixel tree there. And if you really think about it, we are just turning on pixel by pixel to create all the different images and even the effects. And it's actually, again, very similar to what a light bright does. Okay. Now, one caveat to our props versus your high-res P5, P10 panels, even your projection displays, and etc. The pixels that we use in our props generally have the spaces in between them, even if you're a 1-inch density, and those gaps will show up in a lot of circumstances. Those pixels aren't next to each other to fully fill in your TVs and your P5 and P10 panels, which have, much closer pixel density. Software. Again, this is 2018. There is a ton of different software out there. You can use Adobe Photoshop, Corel Paint Shop Pro, which I actually like. I've been using that for probably 15 years. You can go online and find a free copy of a 1 or 2 year old version, and usually you can upgrade it to the current version for about $20. Microsoft Paint is simple and easy. Even the Paintbrush app that you can load for your Mac will do the same thing. This isn't rocket science. We're not creating Mona Lisas to put in galleries for sale or anything. They're just props that we're using. Online, there are 2 very good websites that you can use. One is Piskel, which is the Piskel app, and a lot of people use this. I see just tons of recommendations. I've used it myself. It's free. You go online, you set your parameters, you create your images, save them, use them in your show. Fantastic online website. Pixel art basically does the same thing. It's not quite, as frequently used, but it'll allow you to do the same thing. If you want to get into some little bit higher resolution graphics, more advanced options, there's another free online site, Pixlr. But again, you really have to start to know what you're doing if you get into the advanced graphics. And, that's something that, is an art form in and of itself once you get into that. Piskel. This is just a screenshot. Quick little R2-D2 I drew of on the Piskel app. As you can see, it's a blocky image, but there's detail in this to pull out and say, hey, that is R2-D2. When it translates to something on the show, your tree, your matrix, or something like that, people are going to know immediately what it is because they know what it should look like. I did animate this to a singing face. People might wonder why, but if you look at the head and you move the blue blocky parts from side to side, it mimics his head movement and his lights flashing, which is basically his mouth movements as he talks. So there's a lot of things that you guys can do if you just think outside the box, stop, look at something, come up with a game plan. This is the pixel art that I told you about. It's very similar to Piskel, and again, you can get your images drawn. Remember, though, we're talking low resolution, and these things are not going to be crisp and sharp. High resolution and low resolution scaling issues. Again, obviously, with high resolution images, your TVs, computers, all these video games and stuff, they demand high resolution. They can take advantage of all that shadowing, the color curves, and the definition that really make them stand out. We are as archaic as possibly can be with our light shows. And again, even the P5, P10 panels, I've seen these up close in person, talked to a sign guy by the house who strictly manufactures them, installs them. Even those tend to be lower resolution than what we're used to seeing. But if you take a high resolution image on a low resolution prop, it's going to hinder your viewer's experience. And, that's one thing we want to avoid. And that's even if you test, demo everything, and decide you want to continue to keep that in your show at the time. I did a 14 by 19 pixel Frankenstein on some props. As again, remember, you have a 20 by 20, 32 by 32 matrix, 16 by 50 tree, a 32 by 75 pixel tree here, and that 14 by 19 is not scaled. That image is not scaled at all, and that's how it basically appears on those props, which I would assume are close to low resolution props that newbies, first, second year rookies really have in their shows. When I scale that prop to fit into or scale that image to fit into the prop, you can see that things start to change a little bit here. It fills out the 20 by 20 matrix the same. The bottom matrix, it fills it out, doesn't look too bad. The trees, you start to lose some of the definition and size of the images. I did the same thing with some skulls. You can see that they appear a little bit differently. This is not scaled. We scaled them to fit, and now you're starting to distort the images and lose some rows of pixels on one side or the other. Of course, the 32 by 75 tree, is more optimal for something like that, but a lot of guys don't use those when they first start their shows. I take a medium resolution, 32 by 42 Frankenstein with no scaling, and I've completely lost the concept on two of the props. It only appears decent on the larger matrix and the larger tree. The other two options, something we wouldn't put in our show. When I scale it down, you see what happens. I lose the eyes, I lose mouth definition, and it's not something that most of us would put in our prop because it's just not going to look right. Again, I go with a medium resolution skull that basically has no detail, and you can see the same thing happens with that compared to scale. So, it's important when you do these props to decide, hey, what type of images are we going to put on these? How are they going to look? And just keep in mind, this is not rocket science. Again, anybody can hit these websites and scale these. Now, I did take a high-resolution image that is not scaled. The image was native at 237 by 328, no scaling, and you can see it doesn't look like anything whatsoever. I scale that image down, and most people are going to look at this and think, hey, it's supposed to be a Santa Claus, right? xLights has done as much as it can to try and convert this to a seeable image. Unfortunately, that is what the image actually looks like. So again, when you're doing these images, putting them on your props, you want to be a little bit careful. Drawing and resizing. Again, a lot of people want to grab images off the internet or alter them and throw them on their props, but you have to be careful. When you use these images, you resize them, something's going to happen with them. regardless of what type of software you use, whether it's free, whether you pay for it or whatnot, when you take an image from its native resolution and either scale it up or scale it down, something's going to happen. Now, most of the time, you can scale images upwards and it'll have little effect. But as soon as you start to take away, you're going to lose things, and you're going to end up with eliminating pixels, and the color ranges will change automatically, and you're not going to get the image that you want to use in your presentation in your show. If you take a look at that Toby Mac image, what I've done is I've taken it from its original high resolution, and I've slowly decreased it down to a 23 by 32 pixel image, and it's obvious what happens there. And the software can only do so much, like I said, because you're taking hundreds of pixels worth of data. It's going through all kinds of algorithms and then processing to try and reduce it to similarly match the original. Unfortunately, it just kind of looks like Toby Mac ended up on crack out on Skid Row there. So it's something we don't want to use. When you scale up, you can hardly see any type of difference there. This image was doubled in size from the left to the right, no difference whatsoever. So again, you're okay sizing up, sizing down. That's probably not going to be a good thing to do. If you do size an image up, one of the things that will help you is to do it in hundreds of a percent. So if you take an image from 100% and upscale it to 200, you're basically just doubling the image information, and it's very easy for the computer to do. It's easy for your lights to show that because it's just doubling the amount of pixels. You take an odd number, 100 to 150%, something is going to be off, because sometimes when you have 3 pixels and you're going to increase that 150%, well, you're talking about 4.5 pixels, and xLights not going to draw that. Okay, so try to keep it up. Take your image from 100% to 200% or 300%. But again, there's going to be downfalls to that as well. If you look at this little deer here, the small image is probably okay. Again, it's a low resolution image, but when you upscale this, you can see it just starts to become blocky. And if you're okay with that, that's fine. But again, most people don't want to put that in their show. But, if that's what your only option is, then, go ahead and go with it. That's, again, you want to be careful. Highly impacted when you enlarge the low resolution images there. And again, when I ran the print shop, we'd get people in with very small pictures that want us to scan, copy, and put this on 6 foot by 6 foot banner for their graduation. And basically that's what they ended up looking like, a little blocky deer. With all of that in mind, your best practice, again, is to choose your images or create your images that match your prop resolution as closely as possible. So if you have a 16 by 50 tree, a 20 by 20 matrix, when you start to draw or create images or size them, you want to come as closely as possible to that resolution. Search terms. When you start to search for images that you can use or copy, and I do this a lot, I'll do a search for an image, I'll find it, I will put it next to my canvas, and I'll pixel draw something similar. You can see here I Google low resolution Santa Claus. I'm telling you right now, not one single image that's currently on that screen is usable on a low image prop. I changed the wording to a pixel Santa Claus, and there we go. Now we have images that you could copy or recreate and turn into singing faces or use on your pixel props with a little bit better results over there. And again, remember, they're going to come out blocky. It is what it is. Low resolution minion, these are not going to appear anywhere near the resolution you see here. I did a search for pixel minion, and there we are. And in the Singing Faces project and xLights itself, I think there are a few singing minion trees and faces in there. And they're very easy to convert if you want to. If you look at the mouth regions on some of these there, you can change those mouths to mimic the phonemes and create your singing faces, or do whatever you want to, even if you just want to flash your minion images on there. Remember what I said about drawing images according to your intended prop size. Again, I'm not sure how this is equating here as far as what you guys can see on the screen. But what I've done here is I've defined my image dimensions to be a 16 by 20. I know that if I draw something on a canvas that is 16 by 20 pixels, that it's going to equate and come up okay on a prop that's roughly that same size. You can do this in all of that software out there. If you look at the center image there, it just looks like a little gray block. That's what your canvas is going to appear like, because that's what the size of that is on your screen. So you'll have to enhance your canvas to bring it up to the larger image so that you can start your drawing and actually see what you're doing. Otherwise, you're just going to see little itty bitty dots, and it's not going to do you any good. All of that software I showed you has one form or another of creating your canvas size here. That's Piskel, and this is Pixlr. So again, you make sure you match resolution to your prop size or remotely close to it. Your brush size. You can set your brush size whatever size you want, but it's not going to do you any good. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to find yourself deleting portions of your image. The best thing to do is remember, light bright comparison. Set your brush size to one single pixel and then start to draw your image. Not only can you delete, a couple of pixels if you make a mistake, but again, it's that light bright theory. You start plugging in the colors and the outlines of your face, and you're going to be able to create an image easier and know what you have to use with as far as your canvas space goes. These are the canvas sizes for those 4 props that I had showed you earlier, the matrices and the trees. This is what they look like. Of course, we don't get the nice little design that xLights shows us. So these images are what you're going to have to use to equate moving over your props. Again, you draw pixel by pixel. And again, what I suggest you do is either split your screen, look at something that you want to draw, and start to mimic it as close as possible. I did a little bit of robot here for you guys. I drew 3 pixels at the top of his head, which is his antenna. I moved with a couple of more pixels to fill the antenna in more. As you can see here, I started on the head outline. Second picture over, I completed his head outline, and it's starting to take shape as a singing face or a robot face. One thing when you create faces is you definitely want to use an odd canvas size. What I mean by this is you want a 15 pixel wide or a 17 pixel wide, 19 pixel wide image. And the reason you want to do this is because it will help you easily center your eyes and, more importantly, your mouth. Because if you do something that's 18, 20, or an even number, you're not going to get a center line directly down the middle of the image. I completed it by filling in a little bit of the gray area so it would give me a better idea of what I had to work with. I just started filling in a few more pixels. I put in some eyes. I moved over, and I created a base for a mouth. Here you have a completed robot. I added just a little bit of color on the sides to it to round it out so it just wasn't black and gray. What you'll notice I did on the right-hand side is I have a little cheat sheet. It's the phonemes for all of the mouth positions. So when you go to draw your mouth positions, you can look over there and see what they should look like or as close as possible. Again, low resolution, you are not going to get those mouth phonemes on a low resolution image. Okay, but you can use them to help create something as close as possible. What I do is I draw in the mouth, is I make a little scribble mark next to each phoneme and save it so that I know I've completed that already. Added another little feature there. Here we go. We have the E phoneme filled in, and this is a complete set of 11 phonemes with all of the different mouths drawn into it. With low resolution, you're going to be able to cheat because a lot of the mouth movements are really basically the same. Your rest positions or rest eyes closed, you're going to be able to get away with basically 5 or 6 images just renamed. And if you try to get into creating all different of the 10 phonemes differently, it's not going to work, so save yourself some time there. When we use these on props, what you draw is not always what you're going to see. And this is a perfect example of that. What I did here was take a little green witch with a hat. She just looks like a big block. But when I move that over to my tree, and that's a 16 by 50, you can start to see the eyes look a little bit more rounded. The top of her head, that purple area, actually is conical, forms a hat with her buckle on it. The nose rounds out a little bit, and it helps with the image and what you're seeing, and ultimately what your show watchers are going to see. We had a discussion a while back. Someone said you can't really do a pumpkin to make it look kind of round. If you look at the image in the center, drawn as a pumpkin, when you move this over to props, because of the way that strips are angled on trees, getting wider toward the bottom, etc., that pumpkin is actually rounded out and looks more realistic than that, crap image in the middle. And you look over at the matrix on the right-hand side, obviously you really don't want to use that style of pumpkin on your matrix because it gives you that blocky side and that long chin in the middle there. But again, you play with these props, you're going to see how easy it is to translate from your canvas over to your prop and get a different result. I did a quick little white boomer here. You take the image on the left, it doesn't look that good. Doesn't even look that good on the 16 by 50. But most people are going to look at it and think, okay, kangaroo, especially our Aussie friends who, that's their big thing is the white boomers. You put that same image over on a 32 by 75 tree, it stands out quite a bit more. So remember, what you draw is not always going to be what appears on your props. So it's going to be a little touch and go. Play around with it a little bit. Color choice. Now remember, my robot head had a black outline. Now if I put him on this white or yellow tree, you can see his black outline and it appears to be a full head. I have everything behind him darkened and I've completely lost the outline of the robot head. So when you choose your colors, you have to consider a couple of things. Are you going to put this on a color background while it's singing or being displayed? Or if not, you're going to have to choose something different, and whatever you choose is going to be just fine. You can make Santa's solid red. They don't have to have black outline faces or anything like that. Your R2-D2s, any of your faces, just be careful because you might put a lot of time and effort into creating your face thinking, oh, I'll just pop it on a matrix or something, and then all of a sudden it just doesn't look like what you spent an hour drawing. And I'm being a little facetious there. You get the hang of these faces, you can knock one out in probably about a half hour or less. And that's all 10 or 11 phonemes in the system. When you go to draw angles, low resolution is not going to work for you. It does not do that good for us because remember, we're drawing in pixel by pixel. lower left corner is a single line diagonal. I doubled that line up. It doesn't quite look as good. Up above that, I have 3 pixels wide of a line, and it creates, more of that angle that most people would recognize. If you try to draw anything other than a 45-degree angle on anything, you're going to end up with nothing but a mess that looks like a lightning bolt that was incompleted. Obviously, if you draw lines straight up and down or left to right, you're going to have no problems at all. Real quick, in the lower right-hand corner, I drew a little bow of a boat. Doesn't quite, look nice and sharp or anything like that, but for our purposes, it's going to work well, and that's because we bring in that persistence of vision here. Circles are hard to do in low resolution. If you're going to do something, shoot for a 20 by 20 pixel per inch circle. That's going to be your best option. Again, 10 pixels per inches just doesn't do it. Optimally, you see there are 40 pixel per inch, but again, now you're getting in some fairly large matrices there. When I mentioned persistence of vision, and you've seen this with some of those wands that create the spinning LEDs that create the 3D images while somebody's holding it as it spins, what it's doing is it's flashing lights so quickly that your mind is trying to catch up with them. It is retaining what it has seen split seconds before and filling in the gap. Okay, it's just a mind trick. It's a light trick, but it allows you to cheat the system and basically show your audience, again, something that they expect to see. Their mind fills in some of the blanks, and it actually looks better when it's running in your show. I have a Snoopy that I use in my show. It's 4 images, and this is his salute. When it goes from one image to the 4th image, persistence of vision, just like animation, your mind kind of fills in the gaps and allows you to see the movement. Some of the other images I've used successfully in my show, I've used this high resolution Santa coming across a 16 by 50 mega tree. I've used a marine assault vehicle that I drew pixel by pixel out, moving across the stream, Coast Guard cutter there, naval ship, Army Hummer, and I was actually able to take 2 pictures of some relatives who have passed on that I dedicated my show to last year, and flash those across my 16 by 50 pixel tree and actually get some really good results on that, which I'll show you here in a second. Hopefully the video translates. If not, I'm Vineyard Avenue Light Show on Facebook. There's some better examples there of how these images are. The quick movement and the light, the persistence of vision, actually fills them in, and you can see who the people are, even though it's a very low quality prop. I'm going to show you here pretty quick there. It's nothing fancy. These are those props and what they appear on a tree. You see Snoopy with the salute. Now, trust me, these look a lot better in person. But again, too, that persistence of vision has helped filling in gaps. It's helped taking away those blocky letters and the blocky angles of the bows on these props there. There's your Coast Guard cutter. So you can cheat and you can get away with low resolution images. And there's that high resolution Santa, scrolling across a 16 by 50 tree. Again, it might look crappy to you. You might doubt it or something, but when you put it on a tree and you flash it across at a high speed, it's going to make a big difference, and you're going to get something worthwhile out of it. These are, again, the examples of what the images look like. You can see they look blocky, etc. But when you flash these on a tree, when you add movement, people are not going to know the difference. It's going to drive that point home. I did this image last year for a gentleman who had a full matrix around a trampoline base and wanted a train. So I took 19 by roughly 200, I think, image for his base and drew in some, fake little snow-covered mountains with some trees, blue sky background, as early nighttime. And, he used it as the background. Then what he did was he took the train, and the train circled around the trampoline base, and it appeared to be a train moving in a snow setting. And the key to pulling off something like this is to change each of the mountains. Don't make them all look the same. Change each of the trees. Don't make them all look the same. And your train, again, you're not going to get perfect resolution out of these things. But when that's moving, it's kind of a wow moment for your audience. One of the keys when you do these images is if you're not going to have a solid background, you're going to have your face or something similar to this train. Make sure you set your background as a transparent background. Otherwise, whatever color you have is what's going to appear behind your image, and then that's probably not going to be a result that you want there. Donate. Guys, I cannot tell you how important it is to support these developers for this xLights software. I listen to these guys in there on the Zoom rooms talking about, changes, enhancements, going in and changing code at that moment. The hours and upon hours these guys spend is incredible. Whatever you guys can kick over to these guys, please do so. You take Keith. Keith is flying in from Australia for this expo. This guy is spending thousands of dollars to come in, present his courses over the first couple of days, and enjoy the expo as well. But, this takes a lot of money. So, guys, whatever you can, help these guys out. Donate whatever it is you can. I don't profess to be an expert, but if you guys have any questions, please let me know. And that's going to be it for the presentation.
All right.
Crickets.
Yeah, if anybody's got any questions, go ahead and jump in. I know there was some chat back and forth just about as the presentation was going. If anyone wants to jump in, feel free.
So in the past, you used to have like a black background to your picture. I see a lot of people using like different colored backgrounds and everything for their pictures. I'm just wondering, is there something new in the software? Is there, is it a setting or something?
Well, I'll tell you about a black background. If you set your background to be black, it's basically telling the pixels to be off. And you're kind of wasting just little itty bits of data by telling it to do that. If you use a transparent background, the pixels are going to be off automatically, and it's going to be nothing but your images that show up on there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, again, too, if you play with this, if you take an image and, and there's a lot of software out there that's free. Again, too, whatever you use is going to have a feature for a background eraser. And it's not that hard to do to erase your backgrounds from things. But again, even if it's black, it's very little data that you're going to use in your sequence. It doesn't matter. It's really just going to do nothing but leave the pixel off when you have an image on your show.
So when you say transparent, do you like the checkered looking background?
Exactly. You see that checkered looking background there. what that does is that just allows you, as you draw, to kind of keep track of where your pixels are and where your paintbrush is landing. The only thing that will, translate to the prop itself are all the colored images, blocks that are in there. Any of that gray and white checker is basically just off. The pixels won't light up. Same with the biplane there. A little bit different over there. That's an image for the 16 by 50 Megatree I have. That whole thing lights up with that color scheme there, except for the black. Those pixels do not illuminate, and however, it still gives you the appearance of the black lines.
Okay, so if with the background there, I had a picture previous in probably 2 years ago, where I did the background blue, and it showed up in my sequence. So if I did white, I would think that it would show up as the background in my, say, tree. Whereas versus I put black, it would just not turn the pixels on.
Correct.
Also, if you use a transparent image background like that, you can layer it, and you can have a separate layer that you can change the color, and the image will just lay over that background color, whatever it is that you use for that second layer.
Yeah, when I did it, it was just one picture. No layering.
Layering it in xLights. Layer 1 would be the picture. Layer 2 would be the background color.
So what he's saying is basically I could take this tank, I could put that on a matrix on one layer, and I could have a layer underneath it that rotated through red, white, blue, and create a patriotic symbol per se.
Yep. That's why you want to have that transparent background.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, no problem. Any other questions? You guys, if you guys see me in the Facebook group or you see me wherever, it's Matthew Mark, feel free to hit me up. More than willing to answer questions, help you out any way I can. If, you get started along in this venture here. Anything else before we stop sharing the screen?
Hey, Matthew, just a quick comment.
Yes.
I think you did a phenomenal job with this presentation. The one thing I would say, and just kind of go back to the other guy's comment, it may be beneficial if you open up like one of your sequences so you can show them all the layers that you're using on your model and how it actually looks in xLights. Because I think you did a great job showing all the pictures, but showing what it looks like when you put it all into xLights.
Okay, let me get this started here.
This song is dedicated to the veterans and members of the United States military and in memory of Army Specialist Candy Lee Santella and Navy Petty Officer John Gregory Mark.
If tomorrow all the things were gone, I worked for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away.
Okay, good enough. All of those were those low resolution images. There were multiple layers in there, in which, I overlapped the background image and I scrolled the other images through. Here you go on my mega tree. 7 different layers, multiple images. And again, that's why, it's important to keep everything transparent. So when you start to do that overlap and have things in the background, etc., you can pull off, something similar to what I did on my show there. Any questions? Was it a good enough example for you?
Yeah, I thought it looked great.
Yes.
How did you make the flag wave?
That is actually an animated GIF that I pulled off of the internet, under a free patriotic site. And what I did was I adjusted it up and down the tree, till I got it to look the way I, wanted it to. When you put images on a tree, because it's a conical shape, again, things will distort. So you have to kind of play with image placement on things like that to get the look you want to. But yeah, that was free off of a site, and it's just an animated GIF I had on there.
Yeah, sorry, Matthew. Thank you very much.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Anything else before I stop the screen share, or anything I might have missed, or? No, we're good to go. Took up a lot longer time than I thought we would, but again, you guys want to hit me up on Facebook or something in the group or wherever, ask questions, more examples or whatnot, hey, I'm here. Even if it's, walking you through trying to create a face for yourself. And again, these are low resolution. If you really start playing with some of the software that's out there, and, you can create some fantastic images. I drew that Toby Mac image on regular Coral Paint Shop Pro, which cost me a whole whopping $25. But you can do things like that, and there's guys out there that can help you, with some higher res images if you have the larger props, that can accommodate it. That's not, this is not a bad option for you.
I never thought about putting the physical in the search to get that lower resolution. That was a very good hint.
Yeah, you can look up low resolution all you want. You're going to get so many graphics that are useless to you. You put pixel in and search for something, and you're going to come up with something that you can use. And most of the times, like I said, you can duplicate it pixel by pixel, no pun intended, to recreate a face or an image that's going to work for you in the xLights software.
That's great. Thanks again for sharing. That was great, man. I think that's going to be a lot of good content, not only for tonight's group, but it's a good reference for all these folks to come in. And I know we're going to have a lot of questions, and we always do, about those kind of things, about images and how they look, and why does this stuff look blocky or whatever. So this is a great guide that serves us today and in the future. So I appreciate it.
The xLights project exists because of people like you. Help continue the project by making a donation today at xlights.org/donate.